This is just going to be a drive around tour to test out your new machine here. So let's take a look. First, I keep my tools, my Adobe Creative Cloud, down at the bottom of my screen in the dock. And up at the top, I've installed this little widget here that directly connects me to Adobe Cloud. It lets me know I can either set it to continually update things um, automatically or when, on demand. Right now there's a Photoshop update waiting to happen. My Illustrator is all updated. Creative Cloud automatically updates about once a month. Sometimes it's even like daily, it seems like, when they come up with new things. And then they do a major upgrade once a year. So we are now in Illustrator 2021. Can close this. You can launch your Illustrator just from down here. You can launch it from Creative Cloud. You might have to use um, your searchlight tool and say, where is my Illustrator? Armored, and it will find it for you, the application. It will, if you launch it from there, top hit, let's see, double click. There it is. So it's waking up. Hello, Adobe Illustrator. This will tell you which version. If you go to Illustrator, About Illustrator, it tells you what is operating. This is the 1987 through 2021. Um, I believe it also tells you who did the artwork on the little intro, which is nice. Oops, I don't want to do any of that. Stop. Oh, Jade Purple Brown. That's the girl. That's the. Okay, close. Ah, click on the thing. Click on that thing too. Bye bye. Um, okay, so welcome to Illustrator, and it knows me because I'm signed into my Creative Cloud. For this tutorial, when we work on our snowman, we're going to do it in a letter-sized document. And you can see right here, this is one of those screens that people blow right through without really reading or looking at. And there's a lot of interesting stuff right here. So Learn, for example, has a ton of tutorials. So if you are just loving this or if you're struggling, don't forget to ask the Adobe people to show you some things, because I always find that tutorials that are created by the company that makes the software are much more reliable and credible than just scrambling around on YouTube looking for somebody to tell you how to open a document or whatever. There are sometimes where, I just Google sometimes, like gradations in Illustrator. If I lose a tool or there's something basic that I want to do, I know it's in there and I just can't find it, I do just use the regular old Google and it'll take me usually straight. Sometimes it just answers the question in Google, or it takes me to a quick explanation. But for learning from the get-go, you cannot beat these free, Adobe tutorials, as opposed to like paying for Linda or something. Okay, so that's how to learn. If you want to create a new document, you can do that. If you want to open an existing document, that's where you do that from this screen. We want to create a new document, and that opens up this window. Notice that there are a bunch of defaults. First of all, it tells me recent documents if I want to just look at things I've recently done, which is helpful if I'm trying to find something. Saved documents, there's some templates that I've created. You might be working on a template later. And then it will give me default mobile shapes like iPhone shapes or presets or screen shapes, plus all these crazy already figured out templates. Amazing. All kinds of stuff in there you can browse around in. Web is going to give me some web screen shaped items or some ads, I believe. There's like web ads and stuff. Print, back to old familiar pieces of paper. Let's just do the straight up letter-sized document. So that's the one that's already clicked on over here. When we go to the right, the preset details, I'd rather see my units displayed as inches than points. Points is a technical term from typography. There are 72 points per inch. I do think in terms of points when it comes to type and fonts. A 10 point font is like the default when you're working in like an academic paper or something. A 72 point font, because 72 points per inch is an inch tall letter, is a reference. But anyway, that's another topic. For right now, we're just going to do an 8.5 inch by 11 inch piece of paper. You don't want to do something silly and do 8.5 feet, and then you go to print out your document and it's like, whoa, that's a big snowman. So where's my inches? Inches, 8.5 by 11. My orientation on this one is going to be vertical portrait orientation as opposed to landscape. I want one artboard. In Illustrator, artboards are kind of like pages. If you would make something with 3 artboards and print it out, it would be 3 pages. I don't need to worry about the bleed at this point. We're not doing anything for printing. This is, after all, is going to end up on your Padlet screen. We might as well go ahead. We'll pretend that we're going to print it, so we'll do it in CMYK. We're going to do it in high resolution, 300, if you remember that from our introductory digital foundations information. Preview mode is default is fine. We don't have to worry about that for now. So create this document. Bingy bangy boomby. Okay, so this is a tour of our interface. Right now it also asks me, you want to catch up with what's new in Illustrator? It might show me some new tricks. Maybe I should say okay. This will just show what's happened since the new last update. What's new? Instantly create repeating elements and snap to glyphs. That's interesting. I don't really want to view all of these now, but this is good, helpful information because we are all lifelong learners. Every time some wingnut over at Adobe thinks of a new feature to put into the app, they're going to have one of those little teaching things, and it is good to sort of stay on top of those things. I'm going to read those later about how to do new stuff because they're making it better and better and better and better all the time. And it's always so classic, like, I'm in too much of a hurry to learn the new thing. And then you find out that the new thing could have saved you a bunch of time. So always learn the new thing. Anywho, what we have here is a basic Illustrator document. We are going to learn all the names of the different pieces at the top. The technical term for this top thing is called the menu bar, and actually in it it's called the option bar because when we have different tools open in Illustrator, it's going to give us different options. Right now, this is the default setting for the selection tool. If you noticed, if I just decided to hop down here into the type tool, for example, it would give me some different options. This changes up here based on what tool you're in. So if you're looking for something and it's not there, just check what tool you are in. Speaking of tools, just to give you some grounding and centering information, the selection tool or the key command to get the selection tool is V, whether you're on a Mac or on a PC. I'm going to try to give you both key commands or shortcuts for Mac and for PC. Everything should look basically the same and be in the same place, whichever system you're working on. The thing that differs is the key commands. And in Mac, we use command for the key commands, and on a PC, that's control. I always remember command and control because those are military terms. Command and control go together. So command is on Mac and control is on PC. They're all part of the military industrial complex. I have all these little mnemonic things that help me remember things, so no charge for those extra ridiculous jokes. Okay, top is a menu bar. On the left-hand side here, this little section is called the toolbar. Super important. And just like everything else in Illustrator and all these Adobe programs, you can arrange these elements on your screen in any kind of configuration that works for you. It will start off with a default position. If you lose anything up at the top here is our workspace um, palette, I guess you would call it. It's way up by the question. If you're like, question, where am I? Workspaces. There's all these different default arrangements of the tools on your desktop. So right now it opened up in a default painting workspace. I'm going to go with Essentials Classic because I'm a classic kind of girl and it kind of keeps it simple. They updated the Essentials in 2018. If you look at it, slightly different, more things are open. That's probably the last thing I was working in and it saved it that way. But we're going to go with Essentials Classic. clean, simple, everything's in its logical place. Um, and the toolbar in Essentials Classic, again over here on the left, is arranged in 2 rows. If you would rather have it be long and skinny, if you're short of space, you can click the little double arrow. If we zoom in, you can see double arrow at the top of the toolbar, and that makes it one long skinny row, but it might save a little bit of hand activity if you put them all up at the top. I don't know, it feels like they're closer together. Again, with the Creative Cloud, any of these applications, you can drag out all of these little squares. Every time there's an edge on your screen, that means the thing is draggable. And if you want to put it back and have it stick, it turns blue. I don't know why it's not sticking in there. Come on, little thing. If I drag it over to the edge, it should re-adhere itself. Come on, turn blue. Can't get it to stick. I'll show you over here. On the right hand side, these are tool palettes, starting off with this color palette. Click on any of these and they open up. And again, all of those things, every time there's a little square, you can drag it away. See what I mean by turning blue? If I drag it back to its home, it turns blue and sticks there. I can drag this whole section over here and align it. So this is, sometimes I'm sort of a nervous operator and I move things around all the time, and to be honest, I lose things all the time. Why can't this jibby jab stick? Ah, there he is. Okay, you just have to kind of go right to the upper corner. Now he's stuck down again. Also, speaking of moving things around, I've got my Illustrator window open, and I like to keep it not full screen because I like to be able to jump to things that are behind it on my desktop or switch applications. Sometimes I have other windows open underneath it. Other people like to work with uh, their application window full screen, which would be I think under view, yeah, screen mode, I can work in, which makes sense, right? View and window are a little confusing. Sometimes I forget which thing is where because they're both about seeing how things look. But view, you can change, the the way your screen looks. So screen mode, if you change it to full screen with menu bar mode, that means that it takes up your full screen, but it also leaves you the menu bar. If suddenly you've accidentally gone to full screen mode without the menu bar, that's very confusing. You're like, where's all my thingy mangies? You just hit escape. That puts you back into the non-full screen mode. I'm going to go ahead and make it full screen with menu bar so that things are bigger and it takes up more space. All right, so the top is the menu bar, the left hand side is the toolbar, the right hand side are your tool palettes. So all of these words come from obviously the analog world of being an artist. If we were working on a piece of physical in real life artwork, we would have our table, which would be called our desktop. Here it's called the background. Here is called the paste board because that's the dark gray here, because you can paste your little elements on there if you're not using them. The white piece of paper is called the artboard. The palettes, like the color palettes, are called palettes because if I was painting, I would have a palette with all these paint colors on it. I'd reach over here to my tool and I'd grab a brush, and then I'd go to my palette and I'd pick out a color. You can see on here the bottom of your toolbar there are 2 important color indicators. There's a square that shows you the fill color and a black outline square that shows you the stroke color. So right now if I made an item, like I made a shape, a square, it would be filled with orange and have a black outline because that's what my colors are telling it what to do. Speaking of squares, when we work in Illustrator, I know it's a sore subject with many art majors, but we're working with mathematical vector artwork. It's mathematical concepts. So all of the shapes that we're going to be drawing on screen, we don't have to worry about the math behind them, but they are created by math. And if you think back to your elementary geometry class you might have had in middle school or high school, if you can remember, there was three essential forms in geometry: a point, a line, and a plane. And we have those forms in Illustrator. A plane we would call a shape, that's like our rectangle here. A line, you can see that there's a line tool. Since my stroke is set up as black, my line is black. I'm going to make my stroke a little thicker so we can see it better. And I'm going to make it a different color so it stands off of the away from the point a little bit more. Oops. Made it hot pink. So what you can see is if you zoom in, zoomy zoom zoom, you can see that this line is actually made up of a point at the end. You can see that the color is kind of applied. The mathematical line that goes through the middle, it just is defined by this point in space, this xy coordinate, and this other point in space, this other xy coordinate. And the math inside of Illustrator just gives Illustrator those 2 points, and Illustrator connects them with a line segment. The line segment happens to be wearing a pink item of clothing right now, and it looks pink. It is not a square, it is not a rectangle, it only has 2 points. The line is a little bit thick. I can turn it into a shape or a plane. We'll talk about that later, but right now it's just a fat line. Points, these individual points, don't have much weight in Illustrator. I can make a point here, return. There's a little point hanging out by itself. You can see it's just a little, zoom in. Oops, even if I zoom in, it doesn't get any bigger because it's just a mathematical idea at this point. It's not dressed up in any clothes. It doesn't have any physical presence until you give it something to do. I wonder if, so anyway, point, line, and plane. We'll get into that more. What's important by that is if sometimes you have, let's call it 3 points. So we can make a line that goes from here, oops, to, and then we have another line that connects with that one. Let me move them on here. Whenever you are lost or want to exit something or get out of something, you're losing control in Illustrator, you go back to your direct selection tool. This is like your home base. And the key command for that is V as in Victor. So if I can't seem to get unconnected for something, I can always V for Victor, and that escapes me back to home base. Right now I just want to connect another line to this line. So I'm going to go back to my line tool. I think if I click on that and click away, oh, no, it doesn't want to do that. I'll do it with the pen tool. The pen tool connects, there's that point and another point. Okay, and then return, or return gets me out of the tool too, or V. So what I've done here is created, you can see I've created a V. I've created 2 lines that are connected together at the point. Right now, the line has a stroke on it, so it's showing up as a line. It has no fill. If you look at your toolbar colors down at the bottom, the fill says X. That's called the null fill. That red line across it means nothing. It's filled with clear nothingness. If I made it filled with something else, if I double clicked on that color and made it full of like yellow, for example, it starts to get confusing because now I've filled that area between the 2 lines with yellow, but it still isn't a full-on shape. It doesn't have a third side. It's just like a V, a cup of water that's full of water. And this can be problematic when you're making shapes. Sometimes you don't realize it. If I change the colors around here now, if I make it no outline and just a yellow fill like that, if I make it no outline, you could see how a person could think, well, that looks like a nice solid triangle. I'm going to try to do something with that as though it's a triangle, not realizing that it's just a V with a color fill. More on that later. Okay, so toolbar, menu bar, tool palettes. Home base is V. The direct selection tool is how you pick up items and move them around. You select them. So if you're in this home base tool V, you can move your items. You can change the shape of your items. You can alter them. I just clicked on the corner of this rectangle. I can I can revise him. I can rotate him by floating just a little bit off of the corner, any one of the points, and then I can rotate. That's very fun. Um, I can change the color of an item if I use my selection tool. Now whatever is selected is the thing I'm going to work on. So you saw me do this before, but if I want to change the outline of this shape from black to some other color, there's a couple different ways I can pick that color. I can either click on it in my toolbar here, the front color, double click on it. I want to make my outline this atrocious red. No, I'll make it bright, bright, bright red. Okay, make it red. It's hard to see. I'll make it a little thicker. Okay, I made the stroke red. Or if I want to, it's easy to flip the fill and the stroke by swapping them with this little Swaparooski tool. Now I've got the other way around, the red fill and an orange stroke. I can also go up to the top to my option bar because I'm in this selection mode. It shows me what color everything is. So if I want to go up here, I can just click on that stroke indicator and it will show me all of my swatches. Swatches are like pre-saved colors. So I've got a whole, again, a little like pre-mixed color palette up there that I can change things to. Or if I really want to, I can go back over here to my color palette, which lets me create new colors or pick from all of the colors in the world. And you're like, I don't really like that purple. I want to make the purple a little bit more lavender. As long as I'm selected and the color item that I want is in the front, we've got the front and the front foreground color and the background color. Right now the stroke is in the front and the fill is in the back. If I click on the fill will be in the front. Now I change the color, it's the fill. I know I'm saying these things fast. My advice is to listen to the whole tutorial, then to go back through it and either try to do the things I'm doing or write them down, take a few notes, because I'm calling out some important concepts like fill and stroke and direct selection and selection, resizing, etc. Okay, so up to now I've been using the direct selection tool, which is this home-based tool, V. Right next to that tool lives I've been using the selection tool. Right next to it lives the direct selection tool. And so with the direct selection tool, I can be a little bit more precise. I remember the key commands for these because the tool itself looks like a V, the selection tool. It's hollow in the middle like a V. The direct selection tool is a little bit more complicated and it's an A. And the A is more precise than the V. The A selects little interior elements. For example, the letter A has an interior element. I don't know. This is how I remember things. So with the direct selection tool, I can select points. The selection tool selects shapes. The direct selection tool selects points. So I can go into the corner of my rectangle, and I can move it around. I'm not moving the whole rectangle. And sometimes if you're in the wrong tool, you're like, I just want to grab that rectangle and move it over here. But instead you're in the direct selection tool and you're like, I'm just going to grab that rectangle and move it over. Whoops. Be like, wait, move it over here. Or what? Or what's happening? Or you can also get your shapes inside out like this. Is all kinds of crazy collaborations. I don't know, situations can happen. So direct selection tool, points, selection tool, objects or shapes. I think that's about it for Oh, let me just show you these, a couple other things in the menu bar. At the top, if there's anything about your file that you didn't like when you set it up, you can go to File and you can alter those things. So you can alter the color mode if you set it up as a CMYK file and you want to make it an RGB file. That's changing the whole file, so it's in the File menu. So we can change to RGB. If we want to change our document setup, like I started off with with inches. I started off with other parameters if I want to make my units into pixels or points or something. If I want to edit the artboards, the actual shape of the page, I can click in there. And if I want to open a new document or open a new document from the template, or I want to save this document, I want to close it, anything I want to do with the whole document, I can do in my document file. If I want to, I'm going to go back to edit. If I want to do something with an object, I can go to edit. This helps me edit specific things inside of my file. Um, I can also change my color settings in here. I can move things around, paste things. I can cut and paste just like in Word document or in most other computer programs. You can cut by doing Command X. You can copy with Command C or Control C, and you can paste with Command or Control V as in Victor. That's similar to other things. Um, we'll get into some of these other more complicated uh, menu bar items later. But the other thing is in Illustrator, obviously from under the Illustrator window, if you get in terrible trouble, you can quit Illustrator. You can also hide this if you want to move to another program. You can rearrange your preferences if you want to. Uh, and that's about it. So I think with that, I'm going to end this intro tutorial and then start our snowman project in a new tutorial. Bye bye.